It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. From Fantadrax TV, this is Good Morning Tatooine!
Good morning, Tatooine. Indeed, we're back once again with your weekly recap of everything Star Wars and Lucasfilm. I'm Brian Cameron, and with me as always is my co-host, Mr. Paul Naylor. How are you, Paul?
I'm all right. I'm just tilting my camera so that I don't look like the Ronnie Corbett next to Ronnie Barker. So I'm good, mate.
Yeah, I'm good. How's your week been?
Still getting over this bug that you and I have both had miles away. But nice to see we've both been feeling rubbish at the same time. And then just generally busy doing bits and bobs of work. Yeah. Although it has been nice and quiet because the wife's been on a ladies' holiday to Benidorm with her friends. So so I've had the place to myself.
Very nice. We've got a jam-packed show again this week, so should we have a look, see what we're going to be discussing? Coming up first,
we've got Disney Store's C3PO Premium Electronic Head, Relic. Why would you call it a relic? Who knows? Well, maybe we'll find out very shortly.
Yeah. Sad news this week as well with the passing of Star Wars producer Robert Watts. We'll be talking about his contribution to the Star Wars franchise.
Absolutely. And then it's over to Jabba's court. Can you believe it, Brian? It's 10 years since we first met Ezra in that initial episode of Rebels. I know you're a huge animation fan, something that you'll be celebrating probably into the week. Well done.
We'll also be meeting R6-D23 with an in-hand look at the Droid Factory D23 exclusive.
Then we'll be watching the trailer for a fascinating new documentary on the life and works of John Williams. I can't believe they've crammed that all into one episode. That should be a series, surely, but still, at least we're getting something.
Yeah. And if you're a fan of music by John Williams, we'll get a chance to see his writing process when we look at an extract from the 1980 documentary from the BBC, Star Wars Music by John Williams.
And then we'll finish things off quite nicely in Tokyo with a Comic-Con which will see John Boyega attending, as well as Christopher Lloyd and the ever-present Daniel Logan.
Yeah. And Mr. Newbald there in the chat, good morning, lads. Of course, anybody who's got their own thoughts on any of the news, any of the topics that we were discussing, just throw your thoughts into the comments, whether it's X, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch that you're following us on. We'll see all the comments as they come in and we'll add the best ones to the show. And because your comments and your thoughts are as valid as ours, and so we want to include as much of them as we possibly can. Let's, I think, head straight into the news, Paul.
Head, quite right. Head. Yeah. C3PO's head. Okay, so we've got this Disney Store C3PO head that's coming out. I suppose you would sort of liken this to the premium helmets that you get from the Black Series. It would sit nicely alongside those. Well, what you can actually do with this is you can strip it down to the Phantom Menace version of 3PO before he got all his coverings. You can turn the eyes red, like you had in the final of the Star Wars saga. It's quite a nice bit of kit, isn't it? What do you reckon to it, Brian?
I'm choking at the thought. Excuse me. It does look nice. I'm not a C3PO fan, but that said, I kind of like the stripped down Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah,
version of it, to be honest.
that's a nice bit of kit. I mean, I take it it's the same scale as the helmets that Black Series have brought out.
I think so,
it's
yeah.
full size. So it's probably going to be the best way to get a likeness of 3PO. And yeah, nice that you got some options at displaying him in his various guises throughout the saga. So yeah, nice addition.
Are you a big fan of C3PO?
I am. I was quite frustrated that in the sequel trilogy, and to be honest, in the prequel trilogy as well, his role was relegated to very very little screen time. They kind of made up for it a little bit with the Rise of Skywalker, where he was the comedy element, shall we say, other than the script. Yeah, he's a good character.
And of course,
Yeah.
they include 20 different of his, what they discuss as his most classic phrases as well, that you can play through the helmet as well. Examples, I guess, of C3PO not being a protocol droid.
Yeah. So you've got Anthony Daniels going, "Oh no, not Mark Newbold again."
Yeah.
Is that one of them? Yeah.
Things like that, I think, is
Yeah.
the idea behind it. But yeah, it's a nice looking piece. If you're into that kind of thing, not one for me, I don't think. Next up in the news, we got the sad news of the passing of Robert Watts. I think the 5th employee for George Lucas when he was making Star Wars: A New Hope. Really a wonderful man. We've all had the pleasure of meeting him multiple times, and just such a lovely, charming man. Did so much for the franchise. Battling really to make A New Hope with a crew that weren't really enamored by the whole project, and he managed to pull it all together. And of course, heavily involved in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi as well, and all the hard work in bringing the whole Finsa in Norway project together as well. And a lovely picture there of him at the Dial of Destiny premiere with Harrison Ford there as well.
Yeah, that's probably one of his last public photos, I would imagine.
I think so, yeah.
I actually interviewed him in Croydon at an event 2 years ago. Me and John Hipkiss from Panther Traps. And whilst you could tell even then that that he was fairly weak. His eyes lit up as soon as he started talking about Star Wars, and obviously the conversation turned to his half brother Jeremy Bulloch.
Yes, yeah.
And Robert was instrumental in getting Jeremy on board to play Boba Fett, and I'm sure it's something he's repeated time and time and time again in interviews. But he was talking to us as if it was as fresh as a daisy. He said, "Oh, I've got this opportunity for you, Jeremy, a little bit part. This bounty hunter character. It probably won't lead to much." Yeah, didn't lead to a lot at all for Jeremy, did it? He did very nicely out of that over the years. But yeah, a lovely guy. Such a shame, but as they say, he'd had a good innings, and yeah,
definitely.
Massively instrumental. Yeah,
I think when I heard the news, I kind of thought back to having met him at Star Wars Fan Fun Day when it was in Burnley, one of my favourite conventions.
Yeah,
and just sitting in the green room, and he came in, and it was lunchtime, and he came and he sat next to me. Didn't know me from Adam, but he came and sat next to me and just said, how, I guess you're a Star Wars fan, blah blah blah, and we chatted a little bit about Star Wars, and then we started talking about Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and it was kind of one of these things. I think it was maybe a project people didn't bring up with him very often, and certainly not that day because it's Star Wars Fun Day, and his kind of eyes lit up, and he was so passionate about the way he spoke about the work on the film, and it was lovely. And then we started talking about Indiana Jones because that's another huge passion of mine as well, and just lovely just to have that moment to sit and have lunch with someone like that, and these are the kind of moments I always call it money can't buy moments, where you just have this little moment with whether it's a front of screen or behind the scene talent in Star Wars, that when you go to these smaller conventions you can sometimes just have when there's that little bit more time to sit and speak with you. And I just remember that kind of fondly, what the sparkle in his eyes kind of thing, as he just spoke about his love of
he really did, didn't he would light up, wouldn't he, as soon as he got passionate about something. Definitely.
And of course Lucasfilm paid tribute as well, and Kathleen Kennedy making the comment that without Robert Watt's involvement, Lucasfilm would be a very different company today. He brought his own skills to production, several milestone films, but also gave opportunities to so many other important crew members to do as well. And which I thought was a lovely comment as well, because the job of a producer really is to find the best talent and then to free that talent to do their best possible work.
And it was interesting as well that as the Star Wars trilogy progressed, so did his involvement. So he got fairly sort of a minor role in Star Wars compared to what he had then in Empire, and more so when he got to Return of the Jedi.
So very sad to hear the passing this week. Our thoughts obviously with his family and friends. Next up, Paul, we're going to head to Jabba's court. We're going to talk about the 10th anniversary of Star Wars Rebels, which obviously you're a huge fan of.
Thanks.
And so, Paul, tell us about Star Wars Rebels: A Decade On.
Well, much like the Clone Wars, this was brought to us in a very sort of this was the first Disney product, basically. Before we had any films, this is what they launched Disney's involvement with Star Wars with, was Rebels. And I don't think there's any accident that the first episode of Rebels, which introduced us primarily to the character of Ezra Bridger, very much felt like the opening to Aladdin. You got this street rat, if you like, if that's what you want to call him, trying to survive by taking the odd bit of food and running away from people. Like Mark said there, it evolved and it grew with its audience, which much the same as you got with like the Harry Potter novels, where they start off aimed at a certain demographic and they grow with that demographic as they mature, which is a really nice way of keeping your audience. It started off quite light. By the end of it, things got pretty dark. And without it, we wouldn't have perhaps evolved into the Disney show Ahsoka, because Ahsoka is essentially live action Rebels spin-off. I think there were 4 seasons of Rebels eventually. So Ahsoka is effectively Rebels season 5. I like the characterization. It was a new kind of style for the Star Wars animation. Very Disney in its look. But it did take some risks along the way. I mean, they blinded one of the main characters, and there were things Yeah, yeah. Star Wars Rebels was something that a lot of people enjoyed at the time. And again, for many of the people that we now see at conventions who will be perhaps in their early 20s, it was probably their joining point. You know, they probably saw that on Disney XD or whatever channel they watched it on, and that might have been their entry point to Star Wars. We see it all the time when we go to conventions, bro, all over the world, that people will dress up. I mean, we were there the one year and there was a whole family dressed up as the main six characters from the Ghost crew, and they got up on stage and really good costumes. But it's something that I don't think at the time I appreciated the significance of it. Um, but then when I've rewatched it over the years, um, and then we've been reintroduced to the characters in live action, I suppose what that does for me, once you turn something that's either been primarily come from a book or from a video game or from animation, once it becomes live action, that to me is when it becomes canon. I'm I'm not one for really thinking of animation as canon in its own right. But once you start linking up all the dots, joining all the dots, then for me, for some reason, it resonates. So yeah, so I can now go back and watch Rebels differently than when I watched it the first time around.
I think, if I remember right, it got criticised a lot at its launch, because in the harshest possible way, its production values were less than the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
The Clone Wars, incredibly high production values, but that was part of the reason why it was cancelled. It was incredibly expensive to make. Rebels was a more financial viable level of animation, and so it had a very different look from what people were used to in terms of Star Wars animation at the time when it debuted. But I think it grew to people appreciate it in itself as its own design, and obviously since then you've mentioned Ahsoka, but you had things like the Bad Batch as well, so it's kind of
Absolutely. Yeah.
evolved to have its own kind of sequels in different ways, which kind of brought me to ask a question: what's next for Star Wars animation? Is it a continuation of the Rebels storyline, or should they be evolving into something completely new again?
What would you like to see? Because I know what I would like to see. So where would you like it to go?
I'm kind of all for them starting something new.
Yeah. I'd like to see them use it for an opportunity to perhaps do an animated version of the Thrawn trilogy, so Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, etc. Or to do some sort of animation set between either Star Wars and Empire or Empire and Jedi, or just after Jedi, but featuring the key characters that we grew up with. Um, I don't think that's a cop out in any way, shape, or form. I think it would be a really nice way to reintroduce those characters using different voice actors, um, and finally be able to escape from this seemingly difficult task of recasting those characters. I think if you can recast it in animation, then you make the brave step and start recasting for live action. But I'd love to see more adventures of Han, Luke, Chewie, and everybody else.
Yeah.
Art
by
that would be what I would like to see.
Yeah, Art by Din on X has suggested an Omega show. Mr. Newbold has suggested season 2 of Acolyte. There's a potential as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a good point.
There's lots of scope. Yeah. I'm kind of surprised that there's not something already announced. But I guess we've got Celebration Japan on the horizon that would be a nice launch pad for something. You know, Disney Plus is screaming out for content. Animation seems a no-brainer way to go. I'm presuming with it being animation, there's lots of things that are years in the pipeline, that there's potentially a number of shows coming down the track already. And and some of them could be Rebel sequels. Some of them could be something entirely different.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's probably things that they're already working on that they haven't announced yet. They've certainly done that in the past.
Yeah, Jonathan Tyson there sort of agreed with you, suggesting the Heir of the Emperor as well.
Yeah, yeah, or maybe even some of the books that have now gone into Legends. So Tales from the Cantina, things like that. Things, real deep cuts for the fans that aren't going to.
I kind of like the way that Star Wars Visions, each episode was its own thing.
I liked it.
I kind of
Yeah,
think like your idea, the Tales from the Cantina, Tales from the Bounty Hunters, Tales from Jabba's Palace, that kind of novels where you could have a different bunch of characters a week, could be really interesting. I guess that's expensive because you're creating new assets all the time, but it's then a jumping point for what episodes stuck with the fandom. And then you spin that off into its own series. So if a particular group of characters
exactly
catch on.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, when Captain Rex took off in a big way in the Clone Wars, it was a bit of a no-brainer to introduce him into Rebels, you know, and that links the two series together as well.
You kind of think with it being Celebration Japan next year as well, there is kind of idea of been doing more than the manga style with Star Wars Visions.
Yeah.
That launching to do a whole series in the manga style based around the same set of characters from one studio instead of individual episodes might be something that would make sense for them to announce in that marketplace as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a really good way of sort of testing the market, seeing what people really go with, and then just that's a good point there, Mark. Yeah, but it's an opportunity to do something reasonably inexpensive. I know there's still quite a bit of money attached to it, but it can't be anywhere near as risky as sort of committing to a trilogy or a big series like The Acolyte was.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense.
10 years on from Star Wars Rebels, does it feel like 10 years? Does it, have the characters resonated over that time period for you?
It kind of feels longer in a way. I think the characters probably wouldn't have stayed with me had they not been reintroduced in Ahsoka in such a way. And obviously we've seen Zeb as well in The Mandalorian. So you again, you can join all the dots. You can pull the crew together, and you could see them doing some sort of proper Rebels TV series at some point. But do they really need to? Ahsoka is essentially Rebels anyway.
And I guess that's the kind of benefit they've got. With Star Wars Rebels, so many people have grown up with it. You've now got the potential to carry it on in animation form or live action form.
Yeah.
They've got a huge potential to tap in there still.
I think as well because it started off as an animation and was so well received. If they did suddenly flip it and go back to animation, people probably wouldn't complain at all because they're already familiar with it in that style.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. So an interesting decade, Star Wars Rebels giving us an interesting group of characters.
Yeah.
Lots of potential from the future, whether it comes from Star Wars Rebels itself or other aspects within the Star Wars franchise as well. So definitely, I think it's fair to say Star Wars Rebels has been something very successful for Lucasfilm.
Yeah, I don't think there's many people that have. I don't think there's been any sort of big negative campaign against it at any point. I think it's always been reasonably well received. And yeah, long may it live in whatever format.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jabba's Court's part of Good Morning Tatooine, your weekly recap of all your Star Wars news, live streaming every Sunday, 9 p.m. in the UK, 4 p.m. in New York. And it's also released as its own video every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Heading back into the news, Paul. Next.
Your favourite subject, isn't it, Brian? Your favourite subject.
Toys and droids. Not just that, but the weird and wonderful world of whether it's Halloween, Star Wars, whether it's Disney inspired with the Disney hats like this one, the weird and wonderful way that they include Star Wars toys in it. And when it comes to droids, my most hated subject, I hate droids so much. But at D23, they had their exclusive R6-D23, and it came with your classic Mickey Mouse sorcerer's hat, and just to top it off, silver and red, black
I'm
and
just
white
letting you, I'm
panels.
letting you go. I'm letting you roll with this because I'm loving watching this. Come on.
Yeah, and of course you can destroy it like I would. I would then step on it as well. You are a collector when it comes to figures.
Yeah.
Do you pick up these kind of event exclusives, or would you attempt to try and pick them up?
I like them for what they are, but they're not. They don't form any part of my collection. And likewise, when they do the Halloween and Christmas Black series, nah, not for me.
It's a pass.
Yes,
I
an
get
easy
it.
pass.
I get it. D23 is Disney's big event, and I get it. They're doing the sort of Disney crossover with Star Wars, but yeah, it doesn't work for me. There'll be lots of people who'll pick these up, but it just, why would you have a droid with a Mickey Mouse sorcerer's hat? I don't know.
I think there's at the same time there's also a Christmas one that's been released as well. It's like a Christmas tree. So you'll enjoy that one when you see that one too, bro.
Well, I'll look forward to it. I'm sure we'll cover it on the show. But yeah, the R6-D23, not one that's going to end up in my collection, I don't think. But yeah, I won't be heading to Cloud City if that's where you get droids with sorcerer's hats, that's for sure.
It's a nice background. The card back's lovely. That's about as much as you can say, isn't it?
That's very true. Paul, next up, we've got John Williams.
We have. So we've got a new documentary coming out. It's about time as well, on Disney Plus, and this will be focusing on the musical creations across all of John's career. I take it. So whilst there'll be a strong focus on the sort of films that we like, Brian, like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Superman and different things like that, we'll also get some of his more serious works as well. But nevertheless, it will be a fantastic watch.
Yeah.
And here's the trailer for it.
That have worked on this are Disney themselves. They've partnered with Ron Howard's production company, Steven Spielberg's production company, to produce this. So this is really, a tentpole documentary from the big people in Hollywood, a celebration of John Williams' life and career.
Have you ever seen John Williams live, Brian?
No.
Now, he was due to play some concerts in the UK a few years back. I think it was around the time of just before lockdown, I think. But then he fell ill and didn't come anyway. And I thought, well, that's it. I'm never going to see him. And then the other year, when I was at one of the Star Wars celebrations, I think it was Chicago, Big Kev, good old Big Kev from America, managed to sneak us into the auditorium, and John Williams came out on the stage, and they premiered the theme tune to the Obi-Wan TV series, which was amazing to see that.
Then he did. Mr. Newbold there is just reminding us that he's going to be conducting in Germany next year. Come on, Mark. You'll organise some tickets for us, I'm sure.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've been to Germany. Let's do that. But yeah, no, it was brilliant. So it was a privilege to see the premiere of the Obi-Wan theme, which is a great theme. But then he said, I'm now going to play something that's not Star Wars, but I think you guys will like it. And started playing the main theme to Indiana Jones. Out walks Harrison Ford. So it was kind of a dream event for me to be in the room for that. Yeah, an amazing man, such a body of work. To me, he's up there with your classical composers of old. He's your Beethoven. He really is that quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been to Germany a few times. Never there to see John Williams. Granddad been to Germany a few more times than me, normally at night in planes, but we'll skip that. I haven't had the pleasure of seeing Star Wars music played live too often.
No.
But I do strikingly remember going to... Mr. Newbold will probably remember this because I didn't know him at the time, but he was there. He was a couple of rows in front of me. And it was at the O2 Arena in London, and it was, I think Anthony Daniels might have been narrating it as well.
Anthony Daniels was narrating it wearing a gold jacket.
Yeah, I believe so.
I was sat on the front row with my brother.
And they played the music live to accompany the film, and this irritating individual came and interrupted about 2 minutes into the show, and sat in his seat just in front of me, about 4 rows in front of me, with his entourage, and it was George Lucas. He was the irritating guy to turn up late.
I can't believe I didn't spot that.
Sneaking in without anyone knowing, and then he sneaked out just before it finished as well. But it wasn't John Williams conducting, but it was I think it was the London Symphony Orchestra.
That's right. No, it wasn't John. No, it wasn't. And that was the show that before you actually went into the auditorium, there was some really great sort of costumes and mock-ups outside. Yeah. Did you see those as well? Yeah,
I did. Yeah. I think it was probably the first time I'd been to the... I don't even know if it was called the O2 at the time. It was probably still the Millennium Dome then.
I saw it in Birmingham. Sorry, I saw it in Birmingham. It was a really good show. It was about 2010, 2012, something like that.
2009, according to Mr.
Was it?
Mark's impeccable with his memory on these things, so yeah.
Well, he's probably got the ticket stub in front of him as we speak.
Probably. I remember because Mark was there with James Burns from Jedi News.
Yeah.
I mean, they were a couple of rows in front of me. I didn't know them at the time, and I was there with my partner at the time, and she loved it. She wasn't a big Star Wars fan, but she loved it as well. It was a great show, and and then George interrupting the performance at the start because
I've seen Star Wars music be played quite a number of times now, and there was one that was at the Symphony Hall in Birmingham, and this was only a few years ago, and Mandy's my wife now, but at the time we were partners, and I said, look, we're gonna go along and we're gonna go and see this in Birmingham. She really wasn't keen on going, but absolutely loved it. Thought it was absolutely incredible, and it was hosted by Mark Silk, who I think had a small role in episode 1 as a senator. But yeah, if ever you get an opportunity, folks, to go and see Star Wars music being played live, whether John's there or not, it really does make all the hairs on your arms, your back, your neck, and wherever else stand up. It really does.
Yeah. And talking to John Williams, he's our feature this week on From the Vault, and I've got dug back to a 1980s BBC documentary, and it's a bit of a chunky clip, but it's really interesting. It shows you the process of John Williams working on a Star Wars theme from start to finish, and so we can take a little journey back in time and check out this clip of how John Williams works.
The rest of the music work, apart from the final recording, is done at 20th Century Fox Studios in Los Angeles. Many of the buildings here have facades that were once used as film sets. Even the front of the music editing office doubles as an elegant house exterior. After the complete film has been viewed for spotting, Ken Wanberg, the supervising music editor, prepares short sequences for John Williams to work on each day. There are nearly 50 music sequences in all. He also prepares detailed cue sheets, showing the timings of the various shots in fractions of a second. The film is viewed first thing in the morning as a black and white print on a moviola machine. This doesn't have the special anamorphic lens that recreates the widescreen in the film, so the picture here looks rather squashed. This work is vital in finding the exact moment where the musical emphasis is needed.
It's right here, 135.9.
Okay. 135.9.
Yeah, I haven't got it on there.
So it goes in here.
I guess the...
What are you supposed to be here?
The monster makes a noise. He turns around and shoots.
Do we see him shoot it?
Oh, I see it's on his mouth. Yeah, I see where. Yeah, right. Okay.
He's attacked first, I see.
Yep. Right there.
You say shoot, and then one flies right behind his face. Could have a great...
Yeah. They'll have a huge rumble in there.
207.3.
Back in his own office, John Williams spends the day writing the music for the sequence he's been viewing. Perhaps 2 or 3 minutes of music in the day.
My own practice in films is to use an orchestrator when the budget will allow and when time won't permit my doing it myself. Lately, the films that I've been working on have required so much music in the last 8 or 10 years that I've developed a long and wonderful relationship with Herb Spencer.
Shanti?
Right here, senor.
You want these things with the pianos similarly to the way we did them?
At the piano, sketch on a 10 or 8 line sketch pad. So on 6, 8, or 10 lines of sketch, I can indicate very precisely what the orchestration ought to be. But if I then had to put that on 32 lines or 50 lines in the orchestra, I would be slowed up by about 100%. So I can do approximately 2 minutes of score a day with Herb's help.
Let me do it that way.
Bon.
Okay.
That's good.
When he's finished his day's composition, he takes it back to Ken Wanberg for a final check against the picture.
12.4 coming out. Good. My first concern is a rhythmic one. I sense a speed to film. Every scene seems to have an underlying tempo, or a series of tempi. A whole set of them, perhaps, at different levels. The dialogue may go at a certain speed, the action may go at another speed, and there may be a variance there. So the thing that I try to feel in spotting in the early stages of the film are simple things like how fast is it, or how slow is it, or when is the point in the film's life that it accelerates? When does it press on, press forward? When are the brakes put on? I think, in my mind, that's my first consideration. Okay, rumble starts about now, right?
Yep.
Okay. That looks pretty good. Measure 2 really is Darth Vader's ship. We see the Imperial ship there. Hence the big Vader theme at that bar. But
finally, at the end of a long day, he goes through the score with Herbert Spencer, who will arrange it for orchestra the next day.
So here, 25 seconds, point 1, some little objects float by the window. And the strings would be sustained here. But if it's celeste, sounding loco, I think, Herb.
There's an old joke about composing for film that goes, do you want it good or do you want it tomorrow? With only 6 weeks to the recording sessions and over 100 minutes of music still to be written, inspiration has to be immediate.
I suppose composers for centuries have complained about this. I think of Mozart having to produce a mass for Sunday for the Archbishop, or Haydn writing something for Esterhazy on demand. Let me have a new symphony for Thursday night's dinners. I suppose it's as old as the art of writing music. Now we come to a kind of a tutti, which is this thing with strings and horns. Yeah. The horn trio strings, double notes and cellos and basses.
A little over 7 weeks after the spotting sessions in California, the orchestral recordings start at Anvil Studios just outside London. An hour and 50 minutes of music have been written, arranged, and copied out into orchestral parts.
Oh, boy.
Paul, I find it fascinating just seeing how raw the production of the music is, in terms of it's just him being given a segment of film, him watching the film, determining what, if any, music is needed, sitting there for a morning, coming up with it, giving it to the orchestra for the following day, and the whole 2 hours of films done in 6 weeks. Just incredible.
There's no luxury of time to sort of like have a think about it. It's just got to be done. And what were there? There were 6 weeks out before they had to record it. So stick some piccolos on that. Let's go with it.
And when you think some of the most iconic music that John Williams is creating, and you think about it, he's just sitting there writing it in the morning, and it's just, that's just sensational in my eyes.
Yeah, it just blows your mind. Yeah.
Obviously, that's the 1980s BBC documentary. We're going to look forward to seeing something brand new from Disney Plus on November 1st. And I think we can all agree, just John Williams is just an icon. I think a legend. It's someone that, you know, his body of work will never be surpassed, I don't think.
No, never. And he will be a massive loss when he eventually leaves us. But let's see if he can make it to at least 100.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, he keeps retiring and then coming back and retiring and coming back. I don't know what his current status is, but let's hope he's still got a few more soundtracks in him.
Absolutely. And from the vaults, part of Good Morning Tatooine, your weekly recap of all the latest Star Wars news, streaming every Sunday, 9 PM UK, 4 PM New York. And it'll be released as its own video over on Phantom Tracks TV as well. And continuing Good Morning Tatooine, Paul, we've got one last news item on the agenda. And if I just find it, here we go.
So if you haven't managed to get hold of tickets for Star Wars Celebration, you could even beat that bunch of people and go along this December. And you could get to meet Christopher Lloyd, who was obviously in season 3 of The Mandalorian. Daniel Logan, who has been at pretty much every convention I've ever been to. He's a nice guy, actually. Top bloke. Had a beer with him. But John Boyega making a rare appearance. Or is this a newfound love of his connection to the Star Wars saga? And are we going to see a lot more of John? And hopefully, perhaps not just at conventions. What are your thoughts, Brian? Do you think this is John sort of mellowing again back towards his Star Wars days?
I don't know. You know, there's rumors that he'll be involved in the Rey film.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. It would make sense. You know, they've kind of hinted that he's got some form of Jedi talent.
Yeah.
Could they fast forward a few years where Rey's taught him how to utilize it, and he's become himself a little bit of a Jedi? He could save the character a little, because he was kind of largely ignored in the second of the trilogy, and improved a little in the finale, but his story had become so departed from everything else at that point, it was hard to bring him back into the circle, I felt. But he's a very talented actor. He's got great potential. Give him a lightsaber, he could do great stuff, I think.
I think he'd be pretty impressive as a Jedi or something of that ilk. But yeah, like you, I mean, I thought him, Daisy, and to a certain extent Harrison really held together the first episode of the sequel trilogy. And then after that, they just didn't seem to know what to do with him. So it really would be.
It's a big deal. Big deal.
Yeah.
That's what.
We see what you've done there, Mr. Newbold.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if this is the start of him doing some more, potentially going back to Tokyo to do Star Wars Celebration as well. If he is involved, he's potentially the kind of guest that you wouldn't announce, because he would be your exciting reveal on stage, I think. But obviously the Rey movie seems to be in a little bit of a distress state at the moment, and they're not liking the scripts that are coming through to the point that they feel ready to hit production on it. So everything's kind of paused at the moment. So we'll have to wait and see. It's probably a good thing that they're holding out for quality rather than pushing the project before it's ready.
Well, it's supposed to be set 15 years after the rise of Skywalker, so they've got a couple of years left to sort of get it right before Daisy's that age anyway. So yeah, it's all good. But I mean, there's plenty of people out there that write good fan fiction. So maybe Mark Newbold will turn his hand to it and submit a script.
Let's
go for it, Mark.
That's very true. Paul, that's all of this week's news covered. We're going to be back next Sunday with all the latest Star Wars and Lucasfilm news. So just a chance to round out the show with some promotions of what we're doing over on Father Tracks as well. First up, you can head to fathertracks.com for all your daily Star Wars news and Lucasfilm news as well. We cover everything from the films, TV, collecting, fashion, gaming, literature, music, art, and we're crammed full of interviews, event coverage, podcasts, and reviews as well.
And we're on social media, of course, Brian. So there's 5 big chunks of social media there that you can find us on: Instagram, Facebook, Threads, TikTok, and call it X, call it Twitter, call it what you want, but look us up. And then, of course, there's Phantom Tracks Radio, and that releases shows regularly throughout the year. I think we've just had another episode of Desert Planet Discs released.
We've got Mega Tracks coming up this week, as well as Planet Leia on the horizon as well for the following week.
That's it. And then start your engines, Mr. Newbold. If you're still there, we need to do the sail barge. Get in touch.
And of course, Father Tracks TV on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, X. Good Morning Tatooine live streaming every Sunday. We also have episodes of Jabba's Court coming out every Wednesday, and regular live streaming of gaming, which may start this week.
Ooh, and you heard it here first.
Lots of regular features and news, convention, event coverage, Star Wars set location visits. Hopefully, there'll be some interviews with the Star Wars Lego cast and crew coming out this week on Father Tracks TV, so look out for that. And brilliant. Paul, that is us wrapped up for this week's show. Thanks for joining me again and covering this week's news. Thanks to everybody for their comments as well. It's great to have your thoughts be part of the show.
And we're both looking forward to be feeling better for the next one.
Absolutely. And we'll be back next week. So thank you very much, everybody.
Have a good week. Take care, everyone.
Keep up to date with the latest Star Wars news each and every day on FanthaTracks.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and Pinterest at FanthaTracks. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and follow FanthaTracks TV to be alerted to new content and to be a part of our live shows.